Hello everyone! So, the time has finally come because I have been wanting to make this video for a very long time. These are the Korean books that I think you should read. I am Naomi Heji and I'm a Dutch Korean woman and I live in the Netherlands, and I just came back from a trip to Korea. I was there for 2 months and the last time I went to Korea was 7 years ago. In those 7 years, so many things have changed. I have really developed a curiosity for my Korean roots. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, but my mom is from Korea and she always taught me about the culture and the language, so I do speak kind of Korean. Since I went to art school, my curiosity for Korean culture and my roots really grew really big. My father recommended me this book. Actually, since that moment, I've been really rediscovering my love for fiction books. And when I was in Korea, the moment that I was in Korea, and that was 2 months ago, I read all these books, and these books were before I went to Korea. So I will go through them all in chronological order, and let's do this. So the first book is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, written by nam-joo. It's this story about a everyday woman living in the 90s and who constantly deals with gender equality and who tries constantly to go to school, to study, to go to work, to find a job and all these. And while she's going through all these kind of normal steps, she faces a lot of gender equality and misogyny, and she constantly becomes aware that the place of the woman in the man and the woman is always under it, and she keeps on trying to just get a place at the table. While reading, you really become aware of the place of the woman in society. Why this book touched me so much is, one of the things is that the writer is called nam-joo and my mom is called nam-sook. Sometimes it really made me feel as if I was reading her story, that her life story, in some kind of way. Of course it was different, but it really made me realize in what kind of time she was living, and this really helped me develop in a sense that I understood my mom better. And I definitely recommend this book to anyone who wants to also understand a bit of how a woman can feel when she's constantly pushed back. Definitely recommend it. And let's go to the next one. Second book is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and this is a story about an ordinary woman and husband who live together, and then at some point the woman has certain changes in which she kind of slowly distantiates from society. So suddenly she becomes a vegetarian and she doesn't want to eat meat anymore, and that in Korea, mostly in Korea, it's still very uncommon to be a vegetarian. Then other actions follows in the book where she really steps away from society and she wants to live a more plant-like life. There was this part over here which I thought was interesting. The marriage is interrupted when Young-hae seeks a more plant-like existence, commits a shocking act of subversion. She refuses to eat meat. Thus begins a disturbing and thrilling psychological drama about taboo, desire, rebellion and fantasy. All these things are mixed together to make this book, and I think it's a very short, easy read book, and I definitely recommend it. And what it did for me is, especially the taboos and the more sexual part in the book, I think it's interesting because Korea is quite conservative with talking about sexual desires and taboos, and in this book some of those topics are discussed. This one I also definitely recommend it. So the third book is Pachinko by Min-jin Lee, and it really took me forever to read this book because it's quite thick, because the beginning is a bit more tough to get into, but once you're somewhere over here it starts to get really just suspenseful and interesting. But I had a hard time to begin, so I think it took me maybe 6 months to read this book. My mom is Korean and she was born in Busan, and then at some point in her life, in her 20s, she moved to Japan. And this is a story about a woman who was born in Busan and then moved to Japan because of certain reasons. So when I heard about it, especially after the first book that I read, I was like, oh, maybe this can be a deeper journey of understanding my mom better. Depict an image in my head of how, in what time my mom was living. It was a little bit earlier than my mom, but it was after the war when Korea was really poor, and it really shows how Japan looks at Korea and how Koreans were treated. And the story is of a Korean girl who goes to Japan because of certain reasons, because she gets pregnant from a Japanese Korean guy. And then actually it's this family generation stories of a few generations and how they kind of build themselves up with a pachinko store. Yeah, maybe I'm not really good at explaining. Maybe it's better if you read it, but it's definitely, I really recommended this book because it's a really beautiful story. And if you don't like reading, since a few months they also made a series about it. I think it's, I don't know exactly where you can find it, but type it online and you'll definitely find it. But if you like reading and want to know a bit more about the relationship of Korea and Japan and how Koreans were treated in Japan, and also the beginning of the pachinko slots, this is definitely a recommendation. On to the next, we have Please Look After Mother, and this is a very sad story about a mom who gets lost at the Seoul station, which is a huge station, and then the family and the children realize that they never really took care of her, and then they try to find her, and along the way all kind of sadness and stories come up between the relationships between the children and also between the children and the mom and the father. It's a very sad but beautiful story. For me it also meant a lot because when I was in Korea I was there for 2 months, and the first month I was with my mom, and it really made me realize how precious your relationship with your mom is. So yeah, go read this book. So the next book is quite a book. It's Untold Night and Day by Bae Sua. But this book, I've been trying to explain what it is about, but it's really hard because it's more fantasy thriller kind of book, and I read somewhere that you could only describe the book as a fever dream. Really kind of bizarre, and it goes all directions and different timelines, and yeah, I was reading it and I was constantly so confused. I was like, whoa, what am I reading? And so many plot twists and so many things coming together. Yeah, I cannot really explain what it is about. I think it's about a girl or a woman. It's about a woman in a theater store that is about to close, and then she hears, I think, a radio static, and yeah, it starts there, but then it goes all kind of places. Yeah, it's really hard to explain, but it's a short book. There are so many good Korean writers, also with filmmakers, that have like sick plot stories, and it just goes so deep that yeah, I think it's a very interesting book. So if you like that kind of genre, this is definitely one you should read. Next, we have The Disaster Tourist. When I did some research online, this book constantly popped up, and maybe it's a very famous book, or I'm not sure, but it's this story about a girl who works at a tourist center, and they kind of made trips for tourists on disaster places, and then she's kind of overworked, I think, and she wants to quit her job, and then the job owner says that she can go on a vacation to one of the disaster trips. So she takes one, and then everything goes wrong, and yeah, and then she lost her luggage and everything, and she's like in the middle of nowhere, and she lost her passport, and then she goes back to the hotel, and then yeah, some weird things start to happen. At the end, it starts to become really weird because it's this disaster place where they all go, but actually it's kind of made up. It was not my favorite book, but I don't know if this helped, but yeah, if you feel like reading something not too heavy, this is something nice. Then we have Love in the Big City. I really like this because this was the first queer fiction novel that I read, which I find quite interesting because I was not really aware yet about the whole queer scene in Korea, and also I know that in society it's still not really accepted. It's about this gay guy who has different relationships with guys, and it's all located in Seoul. So they go to Itaewon, where you have a lot of queer bars. I really enjoyed reading this because it really helped me a little bit understand better how queerness in Korea works. Yeah, if you like queer novels, this is definitely one you could put on your list. Then we go to Cursed Bunny. I think one of the weirdest, strangest, horrific books that I've ever written. It's like a compilation of, I think, 12 short stories that are all very different from each other, and they are next level weird. The first story is about this woman who goes to the toilet, and then when she is washing her hands, a head pops out of the toilet that is made from all the things that she have released in the toilet from time to time, and the head asks her if she can continue to go to the toilet so it can finish its body, and when the body is finished then it will leave her alone and it will walk away. And she doesn't want that, so she constantly tries to kind of make the head disappear, but it constantly, yeah, I don't know, it's really weird. And the first part I was only laughing and I was like, what the heck is this? And there are a lot of these kind of bizarre stories in this, and I really like this book because I don't know if you could call this fantasy or bizarre is maybe also a category or a genre for books. If you are like me, someone who like weird, crazy, bizarre stories, then you should definitely read this one. And then at last but not least, or least but not last, I'm really bad with these kind of phrases, but we have Almond by won-pyung. This is a story about a boy who has a brain condition which makes it hard for him to feel any emotions, which is really crazy because only a few % of the world has this brain condition. It immediately made me think of, whoa, would that be nice? Would that be bad? Would that be good? What would it be like if you cannot feel any emotions? And I quickly thought, like, I think we need emotions in order to survive. Like, you need to feel anger or fear to survive, otherwise you will just stand there. And in this book, the boy lives with the grandmother and mother, and then something horrific happens in front of him where the mother and the grandmother dies, but he cannot feel anything. And then the story goes along that he kind of is curious how emotions work, and he encounters another boy who was hurt a lot, or who has kind of had a lot of experience why the boy is very emotional but would like to be someone who could not feel any emotions. So they kind of learn from each other and they have a bit of a strange relationship. It's a very unique story. You don't often, yeah, I never thought of reading a book like this, but I really enjoyed it. So this was my last book. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Maybe I'll do this more often, to do small book reviews. So if you have any remarks, please let me know in the comment area. Thank you all for watching, and I hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!